Hello, everyone. I am Professor Aaron Smith. It's my privilege to be the instructor for HTH 110 this fall, this survey of really the first 1,500 years of Christian history. I am pastor at Trinity Lutheran Church in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Prior to transitioning into parish ministry, I taught for about 9 years at a small private Christian liberal arts college. I've also taught for a couple of seminaries. In fact, this will be the third class that I've had the opportunity to teach for United Lutheran Seminary. As I've looked over the class roster, I've enjoyed seeing several names of students who I've had in class previously, and welcome back to you folks. I'm delighted to have you in class again, and certainly welcome to all of the students with whom I've not yet had the chance to interact. I look forward to reconnecting with the first group of students and getting to know everybody as the semester progresses. If I look down on occasion, I'll beg your indulgence now. It's because I've written some notes. I intend for this video to really be the introductory video for the first 2 weeks of the semester here, as my wife and I are out of town during the first week. We're celebrating our 20th wedding anniversary, and so I will be checking in on the course, and I look forward to everybody getting started on a strong foot during week one, but I'll have to be checking in off site in that we'll be traveling to celebrate our anniversary. So since I won't also be back in time to record a second video for week two, I intend for this one to do double duty, and therefore have written some notes to make sure I don't forget anything. I also am battling a little bit of ragweed, I think, so if my throat starts to feel like it's drying up, I might just take a sip of water, and I also might have to pause the video in order to kind of clear things up and then start again. So I apologize in advance if that happens. I do want to begin by just giving some general course information. Certainly as an online class, communication is one of the primary areas of focus for us. I will ask that each student is diligent in checking email regularly, as that'll be the primary way in which I will try to communicate with everyone. I will make use of the general news and announcements segment of our Canvas site on occasion, so do check in there, but primarily I'll communicate via email. I've found in the past that to be the most effective means of being in touch with folks. So please do keep up on checking email. And certainly, please treat the syllabus as your basic roadmap for the course. That's where all of the course expectations and policies are laid out. And of course, the schedule is laid out in detail there as well. So you'll want to make sure that you're just keeping up from week to week as the schedule has the readings and assignments put forward there. Please do attend to that very closely in the syllabus. If there is a change to be made to the schedule, I will communicate that via email, but otherwise we will follow the schedule as I've laid it out there in the course syllabus. A couple of words about our textbooks. We'll be guided through this lengthy period of history, this expansive period of history, by two very capable guides. The first one is Jarmid McCulloch. Jarmid McCulloch, Professor McCulloch, is a professor of church history at Oxford. He's a member of the British Royal Academy, a very learned historian. His textbook, the textbook we're using, his book Christianity, the First 3,000 Years, is a widely recognized piece of scholarship, widely recognized, I should say, for its competence, its breadth, its depth of insight, and even critical analysis. In fact, you'll find, no doubt, if you haven't already gotten into the book, that occasionally the tone can be a little bit critical, although McCulloch is an outstanding writer, and so it's a very witty treatment as well. Some of that criticism, of course, is just the analytical method that McCulloch is employing, but some of it might also be autobiographical. He's been very outspoken as a potent kind of critique of the Christian faith, which he does still count as his own, incidentally. You'll see in the book that he identifies himself with a kind of apophatic tradition, and that is a tradition that feels that all of our human language about God must ultimately come up short, and so really the premier sort of Christian confession is just silence. But in any case, McCulloch has been at times an outspoken, he's offered a very strong critique, especially of the way that Christianity has failed historically to be attentive to the marginalized voices at different eras of church history. And again, autobiographically, that comes from his own identification as a gay man and his attempt to enter into the ministry in the Anglican Church in the 1970s and being prevented from doing that. He's been very upfront about how that experience has sort of shaped his understanding of the church and given some spirit to his own critique, which is, of course, beneficial for all of us to hear and to continue from which to learn. Our second primary guide will be Dennis Jantz, Professor Jantz, or I should say Emeritus Professor Jantz, Emeritus Professor from St. Michael's College, University of Toronto, is kind of one of the contemporary deans of medieval and especially Reformation Christianity. He's been a terrific scholar of Lutheranism. And the textbook that he edited is the first of a 7-volume series entitled A People's History of Christianity. And again, we're looking at volume 1 of that, a collection of essays that intends to shed light on the masses, if you like, the regular Christian people, not the elites, not the cultural, social elites, not also the theological elites, or in many cases even the ecclesial elites, those who are in positions of leadership that most Christian textbooks focus on. Some of the individuals that will come to light in Jantz's, or the essays in Jantz's text, certainly are theological or even ecclesial giants, but they may have come from much less auspicious backgrounds than we might expect. And the point of that approach to history that you'll see in that text is really to draw to the surface the life and the day-to-day circumstances of what represents probably 90% or more of Christians historically. It's not the prominent voices that we're always used to hearing. It's the peasants, it's the slaves, it's, again, those who were marginalized and for whatever reason their story was not told. So I'm sure we'll all learn a great deal as we work together through that book. Two very small additional textbooks we'll encounter later in the term. The first by Dame Averil Cameron on Byzantine Christianity. Averil Cameron is Emerita Professor of Late Antiquity and British History at the University of Oxford. She also is a very learned historian. And her text, of course, then will treat really the Eastern Church from the 4th to the 15th centuries. And I think it's a salutary exercise for us Western Christians to give some special attention to the Eastern Church and its development, because we're often not quite so aware of the way in which that church, its thought structures, its understanding of who Christ is and the ministry and mission of God in the world, how it relates and at times is a little bit different, quite a bit different than our own understanding. So we'll look at that book together, and we'll also get kind of a snapshot view of medieval mysticism through a text by Janina Ramirez. Janina Ramirez is not a church historian. She is rather a British historian of art and culture. And so I'm very eager for all of us to engage together this work of hers on the famous or prominent 14th century mystic Julian of Norwich, English anchoress. Anchoress is someone participating in a monastic movement that retreats from secular society, and in Julian's case, she authored some very compelling accounts of her own experience of the divine. So those are our texts, and I'm eager for us all to work through them as the semester moves forward. With that, then, let me say just a few words about really the content of our first 2 weeks here of the semester. As you'll find in the syllabus, the first 2 weeks of the class are dedicated to this dual background to the emergence of Christian faith in Greco-Roman culture on the one side, and the people, history, and religious background of Judaism, the people of Israel, and the religious history of Judaism on the other. And so first, with regard to the Greco-Roman background, which you'll read about during week 1 in McCulloch, and of course I've got some primary source wildcard readings for you there as well, out of the great epic poet Hesiod, as well as Plato. But the Greco-Roman background to the history of Christian faith has been widely studied, and it is of course a tremendously diverse background. And as you will no doubt discover if you've not already, really Christianity's appropriation of it has been somewhat ad hoc, necessarily so, because there are so many diverse and even disparate elements to it. So our our objective in week one here is certainly not to come to some kind of comprehensive account of the Greco-Roman background to to Christian faith. That would be well beyond the scope, really, of a single class, let alone a week of a class. So what I want to accomplish instead is just to kind of get us some sense of the flavor, the variety of ways in which Christianity has or might historically interact with thought structures, social structures, political structures that emerged in the centuries before Christ Jesus in the Greco-Roman world. And so, again, there will be you will read in McCulloch, and as you engage, if you wish, the wildcard readings this week, you'll see everything from a kind of immanentist account of divinity. Immanentism is a sense in which the divine is everywhere among us in the world, in fact, deeply within us, and even our emotions, our psychological states reflect some kind of divine impulse, perhaps. We see this certainly in the ancient mythological accounts of the gods, and again, Homer and Hesiod. There is the polis, the city, and the rise of democracy in ancient Greece. There's the inheritance of basic social structures, the ecclesia, the community, the coming together of a community, not only in the Greco-Roman world, but of course the ecclesia is the emergence of the church, and ways in which the coming together of collections of Christ followers reflect the background of the Greek ecclesia. Of course, philosophy, the concept of logos, the presumed access to truth through the application of reason, Platonic dualism, Aristotelian obsession, if you like, with the created order, cynicism, Epicureanism, Stoicism, eventually Neoplatonism. There's just a tremendous variety of ways in which the Greco-Roman background lays a foundation for Christian faith, and Christian individuals, theologians have appropriated, again, that background. So I want for us in our readings to get some sense for that. The wildcard readings, in particular from Hesiod to Plato, will trace this arc from a kind of immanentist account of deity everywhere in the world around us to a much more transcendent account, a critique, really, of the mythological account that comes out of Plato, specifically in his work in the Republic. So please enjoy. I hope you will enjoy getting into some of that background. That's one area. And then the second area, week two, will of course deal more directly with the Jewish background. This essential social and religious context for understanding Jesus. Jesus is, of course, confessed by Christians to be the Jewish Messiah. So the history and prophetic expectations of this people frame expectations for their political, social, spiritual deliverance, salvation, and so as Jesus is confessed to be Savior, soteros, we cannot understand that confession of the early church, certainly outside of this essential Jewish background. His life, his message must be located within the expectations of the prophets, the expectations of first century Jewish people, even as Jesus might, and certainly does, as we well know, challenge those expectations and reframe them. The canonical Hebrew Bible, extra-canonical works of the Second Temple period, all of these writings provide necessary foundation for comprehending who Jesus was, and certainly thus the kind of faith that he fostered. And to that end, the wildcard reading for week two that I've given you as an option, if you wish to engage it, is from this 2nd century BC work, this prominent apocalyptic writing, First Enoch. And so you're invited to read that and engage with the questions that I've posed as options to engage that work. Final word then here as I wrap this introductory video up is on the historical study of Christian faith. The work of professional historians more or less ends with presentation of their subject matter, and as indicated, certainly in the case of our authors, we will encounter some general interpretation, some sort of critical analysis of it. But the study, I would like to invite you to consider the reality that the study of Christian history within the seminary, within a seminary context, obliges us to take really another step beyond presentation of material and some general analysis of it. We study with the express purpose of bringing this subject matter to bear on Christian witness and the work of ministry to which God has called us. So I study always with wondering, thinking about the relevance of what I'm learning. So, for instance, for the young man that I visited in jail just this morning, not long actually before I've sat down to record this video, what wisdom from the church might be gained from for his life and for the circumstances of ministry as I and others, as part of this community of faith, as we try to be a part of his life. What wisdom from stories of those who suffered imprisonment, justly or unjustly, I should say, even 1,000 years ago. What wisdom might be gained for the work that we're doing? In what ways has the church been complicit in human misery? A little more broadly asked, and in what ways has it offered hope? How might the wrongly accused find strength and courage from the martyrs, and perhaps even more difficultly, how might the justly accused, the rightly accused, find nevertheless hope for forgiveness and reconciliation? Such questions are always before us ministers and advocates, certainly more so than they would necessarily be before professional historians. So I want to encourage you, as I indicated in the syllabus, to think about these questions questions like this as the semester progresses. How has the Christian faith been illuminated by the subject matter we studied? How has its witness been illuminated historically? How might it be illuminated today? In what ways has Christian witness been obscured by some of its history? And how may it be obscured even today by that history? So I encourage you to press on to such questions as these. I look forward to our interactions and discussion forums in your papers that you will write as we press ahead to this very kind of discourse. And again, I'm eager to get to know everybody and delighted to be having the opportunity to study this material together. Thank you for being a part of the class, and blessings to you as your semester gets started.